Many Magic the Gathering players ask the question, is it worth it to buy the Dragons of Tarkir event deck, Landslide Charge? Is Landslide Charge really a deck powerful enough to jump into tournament play with? Will it truly give you a fighting chance? What about financial value? Are the cards in this event deck worth the price tag? And are those cards ones that players will actually use in Standard? Let's find out. Landslide Charge contains the following. So we are in red, green, and blue, which means that this is a Ceta deck, or I suppose the clan formerly known as Temur. Does anybody else find it strange that the event deck for Khans of Tarkir was not a tricolor wedge deck, but now that the clans have transformed into two-color broods, we are given a deck in clan colors? A clan that no longer exists? I would have thought that Khans of Tarkir would have had an event deck themed after one of the 5 clans, and Dragons would have had one of the 5 broods, but no matter. Okay, so the Dragons of Tarkir event deck has only 5 cards from Dragons of Tarkir in it, and most of the bulk is Theros block stuff? First off, this event deck is failing to use Dragons of Tarkir cards, let alone the Tarkir block effectively, as the vast majority of cards here are actually coming from the Theros block, which will be rotating out soon. So here's the first way this deck could have been better. This Temple of Abandon should have been a wooded foothills. The fact that neither of the event decks nor the Clash Pack contained a single fetch land is just a continuation of these pre-constructed decks having what I can only guess is a purposeful lack of cards that have any short or long-term value. Along those same lines, the event deck continues to give us only one copy of each of its own most relevant, powerful cards. If you were to buy all the singles for this deck, the cost would be about $39.15. But keep in mind that that $39.15 could buy you a far superior deck, and that price is largely reflecting the bulk cards within it. But let's eliminate the bulk, and I don't just mean the bulk rares, but all the bulk cards, everything in this deck that is worth $1 or under. How many cards would you say in this $25 event deck are worth more than $1 each? 4, and just barely on the 4th. Thunderbreak Regent at a little over $9, Surrak at $4, Outpost Siege at $3 and creeping up, and then again just barely the Temple of Abandon at $1.50. And in all honesty, considering it's rotating out soon and barely worth more than the dollar and will see no modern and no legacy play, I think it's fair to drop the Temple of Abandon with the other bulk rares. So, in looking at the non-bulk contents, this deck contains really little more than $15 worth of actual non-bulk value. So paying $24.95 is absolutely not worth it from a financial perspective. Now, there's some good news here, and the first of it is that this deck is not going to spike above MSRP. And what's more, it's widely available for, that's right, approximately $15. So it is possible to get this for its value, and also walk away with a handful of bulk cards. But please remember that this is really only relevant if you were planning on buying Thunderbreak Regent and Surrak for Standard. So that's the good news. The bad news is that this does not look like a particularly powerful deck. The strategy behind this deck is to get Thunderbreak Regent or Mistcutter Hydra out as soon as possible, or failing that, maybe your Knuckleblade. Now, Knuckleblade is going to be a headache for you, the pilot, because there are so few blue sources available. But blue's inclusion at all is puzzling. Only a few cards in this deck even need blue, so the deck has a very disjointed mana structure. Blue is largely meaningless in this deck, and it's really just keeping you a turn behind thanks to your now reliance on those enter the battlefield tapped lands. You're only getting a Knuckleblade, a Stubborn Denial, and a pair of Charms out of it. And I just don't think any of those are good enough to justify it. This really should have been a red-green deck. Going back to your, well, I hate to say win conditions, but let's just say your heavy hitters of the Mistcutter and Thunderbreak, there's only one of each. I understand only having one Thunderbreak included, but there should have been a playset of Mistcutters, or at least 2 to 3. The same goes for the Savage Knuckleblades. Beyond aiming to rush out one of 2 potential cards, what else is this deck doing? It's nebulous, it lacks a clear structure, and there is very little synergy between the cards. The most likely upgrade will be to a solid red-green build, and in so doing, you'll likely cut the vast majority of this deck. Final conclusion? Based on the event deck's own criteria as a deck to, quote-unquote, jump into tournament play, as a tournament-ready deck, it's a C-. I do not consider this Tier 2, nor does it give you the tools you need to upgrade to Tier 2. Financially, at MSRP, this is not worth it, and I would grade it at D. However, if, and I really want to be clear here, if you are purchasing it below MSRP and at about $15, then I suppose this becomes a C. Overall, though, I am not particularly thrilled with this deck. A budget blue-white heroic can still be made at around the MSRP of this, as can mono red, and I think both those builds would perform immensely better at an actual Friday Night Magic. I hope this video has been of some help to you.